recorded streaming that live on Facebook. And Facebook was approached because, now if you read Facebook, interested in this topic, please go to the website of the Business and Human Rights Resource Center. There is a section there on private security companies, technology, and you'll have real-life examples of what this means. So my point 5 is to say, and I don't know whether it is within the mandate of the Moot Court or individual law schools, what would prevent you, either as a collective or as individuals, from taking, for instance, this case of Hesewa Dandora, not going to court? You think that is nobody has the resources now to do that, but to capture his activities and raise this with Facebook, not Facebook Kenya, but Facebook internationally, and say, hey, on one hand, these are your commitments. This is what you're saying. You've committed to these principles of international human rights. You're not going to engage, your platform will not be used to engage in this kind of conduct. But now here you've got this shadowy character, whether he works for the government or not is a different issue altogether, or whether he's actually the one who does that, who kills, is a different issue altogether. But there is, his conduct is not helping the cause. And then send that to their headquarters. If you would be interested to do that, I would be willing to support you and work with you on that kind of a venture, so that we can make this, we can make this practical. And let's see what kind of feedback will come from Facebook headquarters. Now, you're worried. Are they going to come after you? If you're worried, we will make sure, we will work with you to make sure that your identity is protected, and see, just see what this means. You begin now doing business and human rights work in practice. So that is my challenge to you. Again, if you are interested, the organizers have my contact information. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Timothy, for embracing the mandate of IJM so well. Yeah, for telling us the work that IJM is doing and fitting into Amaitha's shoes so very well. And thank you very much, Joseph, again for giving us very practical examples. My students for human rights law, they know themselves. We shall revisit. Yeah, we will come and talk about Hesewa Dandora. We have been talking, but now we will talk in that context, isn't it? Yeah, now I want to open the floor, but I must say a couple of things that I didn't say at the beginning. This panel, we had expected the DPP, Mr. Nurdin Haji, and also IPOA, a representative from IPOA, the Director of Complaints, but as you were told, they're in Mombasa doing the extrajudicial killings dialogues. So again, they sent us late apologies yesterday, but we've had a nice time, isn't it? Now, the plenary is open. Let's have questions to these panelists. I will start on this side.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question. My question goes to Joseph Kibugu. Mid-morning we had a session. My name is Sheila, third year, Kenyatta University. In the morning we had a session with you, but I didn't get the chance to ask a question. And my question, you talked about the question of government in facilitating and the issue of public procurement. And Professor Githu Muigai in the morning had actually talked about the government being the major business provider in the country, although some people had some different thoughts, but to some extent, I associate myself with his thoughts. Again, what are the recommendations or measures that will be needed to bring public procurement in Kenya into alignment with human rights and business rights as well, and sustainable development, owing to the fact that recently there has been so many cases on public procurement and some funny things going on within the country. The other day we had the RN Kimorel Dam scandal, and if we would sit down honestly and scrutinize the case as it is, we will realize that up to a certain extent, this topic that we're handling today has not been it's not been followed to the latter. So really even if the legal framework governing the public procurement and assets disposal is quite clear on what should happen, I do not feel convinced, and I do not feel like the government in providing services through public procurement follows the business and human rights. So what recommendations would you as a learned friend give in respect to our topic today?
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Wangoi Mwangi, and my question is, what is the threshold set for an investigation to be considered conclusive? Thank you.
The threshold for investigation to be considered conclusive, I think it ties with what maybe Elizabeth had spoken about, where you say investigations have not yet been concluded. Yeah.
Good evening, Doreen Kizi. My question is based on investigations of police crimes. You all talked about accountability of the police when it comes to extrajudicial killings. But then my question is, do you think it's really possible to get the police to account for their crimes when we are having IPOA investigating those issues, yet the IPOA works closely with the police to get information about these crimes, to get maybe case files and stuff like that? Don't you think there will be a conflict of interest in the police department such that they will not want to disclose their own people? Don't you think it's quite a problem when it comes to concluding investigations in that matter? And because I know there is only one case that I know of extrajudicial killings that actually the prosecution sufficed, and it's that one for Titus Musila. Yeah, Titus Musila, the one who killed a person in Githurai, a suspected thug in Githurai. But I believe the reason as to why that prosecution sufficed is because the person killed in broad daylight, he did not even have those police garments and everything, so it was easier for the people to identify him and stuff like that. But then when it comes to demonstrations and things like those, where the police are in their police gear, you cannot identify their faces. But then other police, definitely they know who did whatever they did, the extrajudicial killings. But then don't you think it is impossible really to conclude investigations in that state? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jacinta Njoroge, and I have a question to Mr. Joseph. You mentioned something about technology companies and human rights. So my question is, guiding from the fact that the right to privacy is not an absolute right, to what extent do technology companies have access to our private life, especially in Kenya, where the Kenya Communications and Information Act has the threshold for the access to privacy that companies in Kenya have, but we find that they have more access than we would want to give to. So to what extent are these companies allowed to have access to private lives of citizens?
Okay, thank you. One question. So I'd like your comment on an issue that I observed in a documentary I once watched. So there was there was this policeman in one of the neighborhoods in Nairobi who was notorious for killing criminals in very, very bad ways. And when the residents were interviewed concerning this issue, they had absolutely no problem about it. So what is your comment in regard to that? Yes.
The first question, what is the impact of your reports? And you will derive from the question, which is directed to Mr. Joseph, but you can answer as a panel. You said about due diligence in the morning. I have observed that, unfortunately, like in procurement, most of the companies which are given are foreign. And if they commit a crime, there is no execution. For example, in 2013, during the ballot paper crisis and all that stuff, the IEBC gave a report that everything was okay. But you find the UK culprits were prosecuted in their own country, but in Kenya, there is nothing happened. We also had the same crisis in 2017 when the French company had issues. And yet, there's a report which has been released this year by the IEBC saying things are okay and will improve. So you were saying there's environmental impact assessment. Now we move from environmental, we go to business impact assessment. Will we be saying everything is on paperwork, but practical is zero? Thank you.
Yeah, so let's have the panelists.
Thank you. So I'll start with the question on whether it's possible that IPOA conducts investigations independently. So I'd maybe like to clarify that IPOA is not a police faction. IPOA is a body that is an oversight over the police. And what IPOA does is investigation on abuses by police or misconduct by police. So I know previously, of course, there's been back and forth on IPOA's mandate and whether or not IPOA is independent and whether it does its work well. But I can maybe successfully attest that it's through IPOA's intervention, not necessarily maybe many other people, but through IPOA's intervention, many of these cases that have been brought to book have been successful. For example, I'll allude to the case of Nahashon Mutua. The investigation was done by IPOA, and the case was successfully concluded by IPOA, of course with the help of many other factions. So yes, it is possible because one, IPOA is not comprised of police officers. No. IPOA is comprised of independent people who are oversight over the police. So yes, it is possible, and I've given you a case in scenario where this has happened, and definitely you're going to see many more other cases that are coming up because increasingly IPOA is becoming more professional, and with the help of many other societies, then they're able to hold the police accountable. So I can assure you that yes, it's going to happen. On the question of whether, like for example, you alluded to the case, I believe you're talking about the cases in Kisumu where people were being shot when police have gear. That is a Baby Pendos case. Recently, I think last week, there are some 3 or 4 police officers who were in charge at that time through the doctrine of command responsibility will be held accountable for the death of such children. So yes, even if you cannot be able to see a police officer, kindly read through the principle of command responsibility and you can see the people who are in charge during the protest are the people who are going to be held accountable and are going to be charged for murder of that child. On to the case, the question Ian asked, and I believe you are alluding to Rashid from Isli. Well, it's still a murky area, if I may say like that, because the society is different in some way. But the underpinning objective, or rather the principle that I believe one should hold dear to themselves is whether or not, according to them, he's doing a right thing. Is it in public good that you take a child and kill him? And that's why we always say, in the end, kotini za kazi gani? What is the aim of the criminal justice system? Me, as Rashid, if I may put myself in that shoe, if I take a child like right now who is 18 years old. Ending his life is not a solution, because what will happen is 7 other boys like him will find the courage to stand up and say, we are fight. If you watch that documentary properly, they stood up and said, wameua mtu wetu, hata sisi bado tutaendelea retaliate. But if you take such a person through the criminal justice system, a criminal justice system that is proven to work, and if he goes throughout and he's jailed, then you've saved that child a lot of trouble, because even if he was caught for maybe a minor assault and is put behind bars for 12 years or less, whatever the provision of the law is, after that boy comes out of prison, the chances are that he might be a reformed person, as opposed to killing him at 18 years, then letting life just go like that. And I'll ask this question: how many are you going to kill until the day we finish all our youth? Because if you see a criminal, a suspected criminal, you shoot him and kill him. You see a suspected criminal, you shoot him and kill him. You're not giving him the opportunity to go through the criminal justice system and let the court decide, is he guilty or not? If he's guilty, and we all know the presumption of innocence, he's innocent until proven guilty. If he's guilty, then there are provisions for that. If he's innocent, then he'll walk away. So I think, as much as the society thinks that Rashid is doing the correct thing, look at what society stands to lose as opposed to what they think they are gaining. I believe I've answered all questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very intelligent questions. I particularly liked the procurement one, so although it was not directed to me, I want to comment on it. I think very recently the government has confirmed to us that it has been procuring goods and services that it needed not to procure. And the test case is the way they did the National Integrated Identity Management System, NIMS. So before the legal framework was put in place, they had already developed the system. And because they knew that procurement was going to be an issue, they decided to develop the software by themselves. So if they have the capacity to develop the NIM software, why didn't they develop the one for elections, for voting? Why did we have to go through what we had to go through in 2013 with the colossal amounts of money that we lost? And they have people within the Ministry of Information to be able to develop this. But I think it's because the government knew that it's because it's working backwards, first developing the system, putting together a team, and then selling as a law. Then they knew that if they were going to procure, then of course that will be a point of contestation. So they decided, to have an interministry team that was going to sit down and develop. So to me, that already tells me that we've wasted a lot of money doing things or buying things that we have internal resources to be able to develop or to build ourselves without necessarily procuring. But I will let him comment. The last speaker asked what is the impact of our reports. Reports are very necessary because like we are an advocacy organization, and we want to do evidence-based advocacy. So whenever we are starting out, we want to ensure that we have correct information to be able to engage in the right actors and also to be able to bring to account the right actors. If you look at the report, for instance, that we did on dammed dams, it was immediately taken up by Senate, and Senate has been using it to engage the people of Solai. So reports are not useless. It is on the basis of the recommendation of that report that we have seen certain things happen in certain ministries. Yes, and I also wanted to say that, we do not do reports and then we sit aside. We always have both a litigation and a political strategy, because you can also not do the, the human rights work that we do only by looking at the law or only through litigation. So we usually have a litigation strategy and a political strategy, and given the findings of any report that we do, that is what informs how we move. How do we move with the political strategy, and how do we move with the litigation strategy?
Thank you. I will attempt to answer four questions, and if that does not satisfy you, please, we sincerely want to engage, and we can follow up and see what kind of support we can give. The first one is on public procurement, and Elizabeth has talked about the corruption part of it. But Sheila, the gentlemen that were on our panel, especially the the senator and the former AG actually admitted, as we were going out, that this is not something, human rights is not a criteria that the government has been employing when they are doing procurement. So if you read the it's called the Public Procurement Act, that is the main piece of legislation that governs how public procurement is done, you will not see any human rights language. Think about the figures that are being touted for the dams. Just one dam, we are talking about whether it is 7 or 21 or 69, that is a lot of money. And you can think of the many people who have been employed, from the guys who will be controlling those, the machinery, to the people who will be supplying them with food, to the banks where this money will be will be banked. A lot of people along the supply chain, and their human rights can potentially be impacted by these companies. Why is it not the right time to begin thinking about adding human rights as a component for public procurement? I have not had any opposition. The kind of the conversations that I've had with folks, yesterday we had the same conversation with people at Kwale County and the governor's office. They said, I know this is not something that you have been doing. There was a big building there that is not complete, and there were some concerns that had been raised about the way the workers were treated. And we say, supposing the county government was to say, if you have credible cases of human rights violations, either because you discriminated on people or there was sexual harassment of the local population by your workers, whatever it was, unless that is remedied, then please do not come to get another contract. And we will follow you, whether you metamorphosize to be a company A and you start hiding under that. So I believe that this is the time that we've got to start this conversation about mandatory due diligence. Yes, we can be flooded with paperwork, but you know what it does? It gives you, as a lawyer, an opportunity to interrogate what the company is doing. We may not be comfortable with the environmental impact assessment the way it is done, but at least we've got something that can be improved. Same thing is what I'm saying. Can we start that with human rights impact assessment? But again, it's a big topic. It is something that is very close to my heart. And I believe that we need to encourage government, and not just in Kenya, but in Uganda, they have come up with something that they are calling social and economic assessment. It is on the contours of a human rights impact assessment, but because maybe they don't want to use the human rights language. But it's very progressive, and it's heading there. The second question on technology and privacy. Now, Ms. Joroge, I'll give you I think we are not where we were 10, 20 years ago. I remember a gentleman who worked at a private hospital in up country where I grew up, and he was a laboratory technician. And every Wednesday and every Friday, in a village setting, the people who are going to the laboratory are locals. He would have a sit-in with a bar, with people who frequented a local bar, and would say, ukiona nani wa fulani, eh? I tested them for minyoo and have a lot of, the question of medical privacy of, by private hospitals. And he used to get a lot of booze. It was moonshine, but he would still get drunk at the same time. But I don't think he can attempt that today because of the question of privacy. Even local people now are aware that privacy is something that is very close to, that needs to be safeguarded. Do they know the parameters? Perhaps they do not. Let me give you two quick examples. Other examples. Kenya Revenue Authority has been pushing banks and even Safaricom to say we need data on how people are transacting, through M-Pesa and people's bank's account as a way of trying to figure out who is paying tax or not. And there's a bit of a push by these two business entities. They are arguing on privacy concerns. Now, whether they genuinely are worried about privacy or not is a different issue altogether. But at least they are using the discourse on privacy to push back and say, no, we cannot give you this kind of data. Then, Ian, the question of extrajudicial killing. We are all here as lawyers, but we are Kenyans. If you experience a case of violence, your view on things, on how criminals should be treated changes. I was sharing with a couple of folks at lunch how I used to be against the death penalty until one day I was robbed at gunpoint when I had gone for a hike. And on that instance, I thought, how misguided have I been to think that people like these ones deserve a chance in life? Now, my views have evolved over time, and I think I am also going back to where I was. But personal experiences, or communal experiences really shape our thinking. And I hope our objectivity is not clouded by that. Now, but the reality is that we have a constitution, we have laws, and we are here as lawyers. So if we think that the death penalty should be taken out, let us then, or if we think that we should allow extrajudicial killing, then that's not a conversation that we can have under the current situation. Anybody who does extrajudicial killing, actually the police are now using a term. It's not extrajudicial killing. They're using, there's a term now that they have introduced, because they think extrajudicial killing somehow legitimizes it. Yeah? So there is that conversation about how to change that. So again, that depends on individual experiences and preferences. Due diligence, we've spoken about that. I do not want to belabor the point, but even on issues of IEBC and the IT morphos of this world, please let us speak after this and we can continue the discussion. I see that it's towards the close of the business day and I don't want to belabor the point. Thanks.
Let me say one last thing. On the issue of sharing of personal information and all, I think we ought to take a lot of interest on this NIMS case. Initially, it was sold to us as a service delivery system. But if it's about service delivery, why did the government initially want to go to the extent of taking people's DNA? What services does the government even give us that require them to have my DNA? So, I think this would be an very interesting case to follow, and it is one that we all should have our eyes on. And maybe just to respond to what you have finished with, if you look at Hess's page, he has a lot of following. So it is we that are saying that, what it does is evil and this and that. But sometimes when you go to communities, like when we were doing Machozi ya Jana, there are people that urge the police to continue with the killings because they feel as if they have very little security. So if the police can even at least take out one thug, alleged thug from the streets, they'd be very happy. So there's also that other angle to it. So sometimes these conversations on extrajudicial executions are very unpopular, especially in the slums, because of what people have endured. And exactly what Joe was talking about, it almost made him change his mind and his position about the death penalty.
Sorry, Doctor. Thank you very much for those insights. Probably I just want to allude to one last issue, and that is the fact that increasingly, even the slum areas right now, through those campaigns, and I can attest, through Machozi ya Jana, we've launched, through the Police Reform Working Group, we've launched several justice centers across the slum areas. And I say this because even last week, there was a community dialogue in which the DPP and the DCI himself stood and said that these things, this is if you all know about the DCI is a person who sat in the most horrendous sites of violence, and he stood and said that God forbid that he ever supports any police officer who kills anyone. And that's why I alluded to the question, jela ni za nini? If you ask yourself that question, then you'll come to realize, even if you've been robbed or you've been done something, there's an alternative, because if that happens to be your child, or it happens to be your next of kin, then you won't have the same narrative as, no, let him be killed. What you'll say is, no, let him go through the court process. So think of it in that perspective, and you'll change completely your idea on how criminals in this country should be dealt with. I'm not saying that what they're doing is right. What I'm saying is there is a process, and this process, if followed, then we won't have crime in our country. Thank you.
So I want to bring everything to an end, but I want to ask you one more time to give a round of applause for the panelists. And then I want us to appreciate ourselves for thank you very much for your very robust engagement. And again, the panelists, you can follow them up. Each of them has offered that they're willing to be engaged even beyond, the 2019 Moot competition. I believe that the committee has their contacts. So please feel free, and not only Kenyatta University students, but all law students. Thank you.
I'll request that you keep clapping until the panel leaves the stage. Thank you very much for the panelists on the third panel. And I think Dr. Kabata has explained. We expected to have the DPP, but then Lamu happened. Lamu happened, and he's there. I think even today they're there with the CS Interior, Dr. Matiang'i, so we couldn't get him to come today. But nonetheless, I think that the insights given by the panelists is worthwhile, and they have done what we expected them to do. I think they have done justice to the topic, and we should give them a round of applause. Originally, there was supposed to be a break between the second panel and the third panel. So whatever was supposed to be had during that break will be had right now. So there was supposed to be juice for that break. So you have tea and then have juice at the same time, depending on the size of your stomach. So if you have enough space, you will have double servings of the two. But I also want to really, really appreciate your presence here today, and to just say that the committee that organized All Kenyan is thankful and grateful that you're here today, because it's one thing to organize and then you find the only people around are yourselves and the panelists that you brought. That is very bad now that we are live. But the good thing is that you spared your time to come here, and I'm very, very thankful. On behalf of the Committee of All Kenyan, we are thankful for the commitment of the whole day to be here with us. The committee members are outside. I would have wished that they stand up, because those individuals have had sleepless nights to make this happen. It's not easy to organize such an event, and especially with what you have had up here, it's not easy to get these schedules, these calendars and diaries booked so that you have these individuals here. And even in absentia, I'll just request you, even if you don't like me, don't clap for me, clap for the other 13 people who I've worked with in this committee. They have done a tremendous job in getting the panelists, in making sure the question for the participants is out, doing the proposal that enables us to then get the funding, and to organize basically all the logistics that you see around here today. So we are very thankful, and to my committee, I am very, very thankful to you and indebted to you guys. You've done a good job to make this happen. Lastly, just some housekeeping. We will retain where you ate your lunch is where you're taking your tea and juice, basically. So the guests will still go to first floor on my left. And then the students and the other participants, you'll have your tea and juice on the other side of the school. For the participants of the Moot competition, we'll have a briefing here. Immediately the other participants of the conference leave, because we have to set some ground rules for tomorrow. You realize that if you've seen All Kenyan before, we usually have the opening ceremony and then we go to court. But then the opening ceremony we had today serves as the opening ceremony for the event, because the conference is together with the Moot competition. They are not separate in events. So what then happens is tomorrow morning we are going directly to court. So 9 a.m. we are going to court. The judges have committed to be here at 8:45. It will be a bad thing that a judge arrives early and a participant arrives late. So for those ones who are coming from far, please organize yourselves and be here on time. 9 a.m. the Moot sessions begin. You'll have two preliminary rounds, and we'll do the quarterfinals tomorrow. Yes, so for those who will proceed to quarterfinals, you'll have 3 court sessions tomorrow, and then we'll have semifinals and the finals on Saturday. So brace for impact. The guys who are doing the research category will also begin with the research category at 9 a.m. So there will be concurrent things happening at the same time. So don't come late because you think it's research category. We'll have rooms taking care of everyone at the same time. So the research category will do the presentations from 9 a.m. and we have 5 courts sitting. So at any point, everyone is in court. At any point, at least everyone is in court. I think the committee will make that happen, and the bailiffs are here to assist you if you need anything. So any preliminary thing you need to do, submission of the final memorials if you haven't submitted, and if you haven't handed down the bank slip for payment of registration, do that today. Tomorrow we are getting in and we will not do another registration because we expected that the first participants of the conference are the participants of the Moot. So do all that preliminary whatever is today. Tomorrow, as I have said and I will repeat, we are going to court at 9 a.m. So you have a duty with the judges, 3 judgment everyone in the morning at 9 a.m. I know you're hungry and tired, and I wouldn't speak past that. I think that is enough for today. But I am I'll repeat, I'm very, very thankful that you, made time to be here. So the committee is processing your certificates. We expected them to be here by right now, but they might be here, but they aren't signed. You didn't want a certificate that is just open, that looks like someone has to sign it and then the place for signing is open. So we'll get the signings done and we hope to get you the certificates by Saturday. For the teams, for the participants coming from the university, we will issue the certificates together with those of the participants of the Moot. So that if you're coming from JKUAT and you came for the conference, the people participating in the Moot representing JKUAT will come with the certificates. That's okay. We'll try and get the signatures during the weekend, but if not, I am asking for indulgence in advance because you don't want me to sign your certificate. My name doesn't have any weight. So, yes, my name is a small name, it doesn't have any weight. One day, it will have. But because we are dealing with, we want the certificate to have some weight, apart from the brand of All Kenyan, we want the person signing your certificate to give it some value. So I'm asking for indulgence in advance. If we fail to submit, give you the certificates on Saturday, we will ensure that they are posted to your schools as soon as we get them signed. That's okay? Great. So we can pray and close. Father and our God, we are thankful for the day that we have had, and I'm particularly thankful that you have enabled us to bring this together and to end it well as planned, oh God. And we just want to pray that as we leave this place, You'll grant us journey mercies, and we'll be protected on the roads and whatever means we use to get home. For those who are coming back tomorrow and Saturday for the Moot competition, I pray for grace, I pray for favor, and I also pray that may the best team win. Thank you for the juice and everything that we are going to have after this session. May you bless it and let it be helpful to our bodies. And that is our prayer in Jesus' name. God bless you. Please have juice and tea.